Welcome to the Maria Liberati Show, where food meets art, travel, and life. This is Maria Liberati. So what does food mean to you? Tell us in a social media post of 50 words or less, or an audio soundbite of 60 seconds or less. Post either on social media and hashtag them the Maria Liberati Show. If your post or audio soundbite are selected to be read or heard on an upcoming podcast segment, you will receive an autographed copy of one of my books from The Basic Art of Italian Cooking as a special thanks. So what does food mean to you? When it's cold outside, it's time to enjoy the inner warmth of your home, sitting by the fireplace or by the light of a beaming candle, and rediscover the simple things you have right there. Reading that novel you've been waiting to finish. Write. If nothing creative comes to mind, keep a daily journal or a diary, or sit and enjoy a hot cup of tea and listen to the Maria Liberati Show. Simple but all beautiful things to be savored in the warmth of your own home. Oh, and I guess it's the beautiful simplicity of living in a country house that has taught me the beauty of simplicity. A piece of cheesecake makes a perfect accompaniment to that hot cup of tea. And here's my recipe for a ricotta amaretto cheesecake. 4 eggs, 10 ounces of crushed amaretti cookies, 7 graham crackers crushed, 8 ounces of cream cheese, 1 cup of ricotta cheese, 1 cup of whipping cream, 3/4 cup of sugar, a half cup of unsalted butter, a teaspoon of vanilla. Let the cream cheese sit at room temperature for 20 minutes. Crush the amaretti and graham cracker cookies. Melt the butter in a pan and add in crushed cookies to the butter. Blend until you've gotten a smooth paste. Cover an 8-inch cake pan with parchment paper. Butter the paper and arrange the crumb mixture on the bottom and sides of the pan and make a crust. Set that aside. In a bowl, blend cream cheese, ricotta, sugar, and vanilla until well blended. Separate the eggs. Place the egg yolks in a bowl and cream them into the cream cheese mixture. Blend by hand with a spatula. In a separate bowl, whip egg whites till peaks form. Then blend that into the cheese mixture with a spatula. Gently blend that in. When the 2 egg mixtures are uniformly blended, place that into the crust and let that cook in a preheated oven at 375 degrees for 1 hour. Once the baking is finished, remove from the oven and let cool for approximately 4 hours. Serve this cheesecake with a glass of Prosecco. This recipe is from my Gourmand World Award-winning book series, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, Holidays and Special Occasions, that you can find anywhere. You can find books online and also at my website, marialiberati.com. You can also find my other books, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking and The Basic Art of Italian Cooking Da Vinci Style, as well as the books in the Basic Art of series, The Basic Art of Pizza, The Basic Art of Pasta, The Basic Art of Coffee, The Basic Art of Cocktails, The Basic Art of Creating a Tuscan Wedding. Again, you can find all of those books at my website, marialiberati.com, and anywhere that you find books online. They're sold all over the world. Hi, this is Maria Liberati with the Maria Liberati Show, and we are so lucky today. We have executive chef Jeff Seligman, who's also the director of kitchenclassroom.net, and we're doing a really interesting podcast this week with him, but he's going to share with us a really special food memory about, what is that, Jeff? Last night's menu, was it?
Well, last night, Maria asked me what my favorite meal was.
Yes.
Kind of my pat answer is the last meal I cooked, because it's always fluid. Yesterday morning we got up, we took our weekly walk to the farmer's market where we visit the fishmonger. It's changed since the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
And based on what's there, is I'll kind of base dinner. And yesterday I got really excited because there was skate. And not only was there skate, the skate was filleted. And I haven't really butchered or fabricated any protein since culinary school. So I didn't want to hack it. So I was very happy to get the skate, and we did the rest of our chores, and eventually, like everybody else during the pandemic, came home, and we had a beautiful skate dinner with I make for side dishes.
I'm sure you had some great side dishes.
I keep them I try to keep, through the pandemic especially. I mean, I watch what we consume. It'll be a protein. Last night was it was roasted zucchini. And and some harvest grains. And whenever I make a grain, I always use a stock.
Yes.
I don't use the word always. It's some appropriate stock: fish, shrimp. There's something in the freezer. There's boxes of chicken stock lined up in our pantry. It always, any which way, is even as a home cook, push the meal a little more.
Gives it flavor, right? It's just a simple way to give the grains flavor.
Absolutely. I kind of look at every step of the way how I can punch in a little flavor.
Yes.
And stock is always the easiest. I will mince up some shallots first. I'll saute them. I'll throw the grain in and kind of toast it for a minute or two.
Yes.
Let it build up some flavor. Let it get toasted. Then I'll add the stock. Put the cover on, and if it's quinoa, it's 10 minutes. If it was the harvest grain, brown rice yesterday, it was 35 minutes. And just back time it, and you're ready to go.
There you go. That's that is a great tip. It's a simple tip, and I think it's something that's easy, but people don't realize they can add flavor so simply by just doing something like that. So that's great, Jeff. Thanks for sharing that story. And everybody look for or listen for this week's podcast with Jeff Seligman, who's the executive chef and director of kitchenclassroom.net. Hi, and this is Maria Liberati on the Maria Liberati Show, and we have Jeff Seligman, Executive Chef and Director of KitchenClassroom.net. Jeff, thanks so much for being here with me today.
My pleasure, Maria.
So tell us, I am really excited to learn about it. It sounds like a really interesting website and concept company that you have, KitchenClassroom.net. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, I started in the culinary world late in life after I spent 35 years in the production world. I worked at the William Morris Agency, and I went on to found a production company that I sold in 2003. I then took a little time off for myself and got to live a passion of mine. I went to culinary school. First time in my life, I graduated school with highest honors. And got to look around. I worked at a restaurant for the experience of it. It's brutal. I respect the work that restaurant people do so greatly, but I found my place in life was in the off-premise catering world. I also found it through actually just landing a job, answering an ad and landing a job, teaching culinary classes at ShopRite, where I've taught classes for 14 years.
Wow.
Because I was a home cook first, and then I went to culinary school. I learned, first thing I learned in culinary school, I was a good home cook. I learned how little I knew about cooking. I was amazed. But then moving on, and every day, I still learn something every day in the culinary world. And having said that, I just have this gift to be able to break down a recipe and look at it from a professional standpoint, and then speak to a home cook. And help them get comfortable in their own kitchen.
And you know what? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think that's so important, because the one thing that I find with my colleagues, like other chefs, if they don't really understand the home cook, they can't really, like, home cooks can't relate to professional chefs, because, they try and teach them things in the way that they might have learned in culinary school, and so you have to kind of, meld the two worlds together. You want the home cook to cook really well, but yet you have to speak on kind of the level that they're understanding, so that I'm sure that's why you're so successful also, because you understand both worlds.
Well, I had this gift that I was able to speak to the home cook.
Yes.
And I can also look at a recipe.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell when I'm teaching home classes, I urge everybody, please read a recipe 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
because you figure out that step 4 has to take place 2 hours before step 1.
Yeah.
Figure it out. You don't need to use 10 bowls. Everything could probably go into 2 bowls. Just figure
Yes.
out what has to get added.
Uh-huh.
And keep cleaning up after yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, otherwise you're going to turn around and you're going to want to pull your fingernails out.
Yes, that is definitely for sure. So tell us, you have such an interesting background. So tell us also, though, kitchenclassroom.net. So that's a virtual,
That will, after that, actually, I had started the site a long time ago. I started
okay.
the site 10 years ago,
Uh-huh.
and I was teaching home culinary classes in addition to my off-premise work and my
Oh,
trade show work.
oh,
I get hired by a couple of leading corporations to go out and do food shows for
uh-huh.
different
Yes.
products, different trade show events. And
Uh-huh.
I just got so busy that I let the home cooking go by the wayside. So completely coincidentally, I had just redesigned my website,
Uh-huh.
and I was decided to go back and I was going to dedicate a lot more time to going to teach home cooks how to use their kitchen, how to enjoy it. My greatest gift is giving somebody a great meal. I love having friends coming over. I love having family coming over.
Yes,
And
and that is a great gift, definitely.
letting people relax in their kitchen. I found home cooks were so stressed about what to make, how to cook a protein.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very happy that I had this gift. And so I decided I was going to relaunch it. It's all redesigned. And when when this pandemic is clear to go, I will go back out. I will relaunch site, in a good way to let people around the metropolitan area know that I'm available to go cook and
Yes.
teach them to cook.
Yes, yes.
To help them work in their kitchen.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. Yes, and I think that's really important. So well, tell me what's the difference? So what are the trends like now that, there's the pandemic? What's the difference of, like say the way we were cooking before this pandemic? And is there anything happening? Like I've heard a lot more people are making breads and things like that because I guess they have more time to be at home
Uh,
and, cook and
uh,
things.
yeah, well, we're all at home in ways. I mean,
Yes.
my partner is inside seeing patients virtually,
Uh-huh.
as opposed to going to an office and seeing patients. She has a chef preparing 2 meals a day for her at home.
Wow.
Uh, so it's I look to optimize our kitchen. I'll speak personally, and I talk to a lot of chef friends, and they say I cook fancier than them, but I'm going to cook a pork loin tonight.
Uh-huh.
Instead of potatoes, I'm going to make a parsnip puree,
Mhm.
and I'm going to make green beans. But I'm going to take a big bunch of green beans and I'll blanch them off, and I'm just going to take a portion for tonight, and then at dinner time I'll saute them. I'll toss them with something,
Uh-huh.
garlic or shallots. And one of the things I've learned that I pass on is use your pantry.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to be walking into the market 8 times this week. I'd like to go in if I have to go in twice this week.
Mhm.
And that's due to personal safety and the pandemic.
Yes.
I,
Exactly.
I have such admiration for the undervalued people that have continued to keep our food chain alive through this
Yes.
pandemic.
Isn't that correct? Definitely. I think they're underappreciated because people don't realize, behind the scenes, all this stuff that has to go on so we can keep our food chain going. But I think that's really important what you mentioned about looking in your pantry and reusing, or not reusing, but making use of what you have in your pantry. And it even kind of, get gives you a kind of can give you a creative outlet because gives you a way to be creative and think of, okay, here's what I have in my pantry. Let's not make it go to waste, and let's try and use what I have and make the most out of what I have already in the pantry. Because I think there's so much food waste going on now, and this is not a good time that people should be wasting. food. And there are so many creative ways to
Oh,
use ingredients in the
100%.
kitchen. Yes.
I mean, I love it. I open the refrigerator. I go refrigerator surfing. I will
Uh-huh.
decide based
Yes.
on what we have.
Yes.
Um, last night's last night's zucchini. The
Mhm.
rest of it'll get made into little zucchini parmesan with some parmesan cheese and sliced grape tomato in a few
Mhm.
nights. Um,
Exactly. Oh, that sounds
look at
great.
Yeah, look at anything you can repurpose. Um,
Exactly, and sometimes that stuff is even tastier than, like, when you first had it, because the flavors have actually seeped more into the food, and, it's actually tastier sometimes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And look at, instead of having something the next night, look at how you can reuse it a few nights later. In the pandemic, I mean, we're two people, so
Yes.
if we have coleslaw tonight, I'm not going to want it, but I may make coleslaw with chicken burgers tonight, and a couple nights later, I'm going to make it with some spare ribs.
Yes, yes. That's great,
Um,
and that's great, and I think too that's a good way to keep, your spirits up by having great food or, doing some creative things with your food also because, hey, most of us are stuck at home for the most part, and what better
oh,
way to just brighten up your day by making, some kind of a special meal or something a little different or being creative in the kitchen.
100%, Maria. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yes.
It brightens up the day. Feels something rewarding. It feels good if I know we're eating healthy, we're eating well.
Mhm.
Um, I am making a bread a week. I've got Jim Leahy's No Knead bread recipe that was published in the Times
Uh-huh.
over a decade ago.
Yes.
Continues to be my go-to recipe.
Wow.
Um, at the beginning of the pandemic, and yeast became a big shortage. A friend of mine scored a lot of yeast, so
Yes.
I never had a yeast shortage.
Yes,
And,
I
and
heard all about that shortage. Yeah, luckily I didn't have that, but I did hear that that was going on in different parts of the country, so
oh, tremendous.
yes.
And I did share it with friends also. So,
Oh.
but Bon Appetit magazine happened to have a very easy focaccia recipe.
Yes.
Um, I started making, I'll alternate them. I came up with personally a ciabatta recipe.
Uh-huh.
I've got a recipe for homemade pita bread, which is so delicious. It's so silly to make your own pita bread. And you
Yeah.
know what? And you know what? It's delicious, and it keeps a lot of it with cooking. Also, I look at it as I'm not being sedentary. I'm
Right.
standing up in the kitchen and I'm burning calories.
Exactly. So it's the food is healthier. It's healthier for you because you're right. You're not sitting around watching who knows TV or YouTube or whatever. You're moving, you're
Absolutely.
using your brain, using your body, and plus you're getting healthy food out of it. So, yep, 100% much better to be, doing something like that. But, I did want you to share with us. I love that story. You started telling me a story about this great rice pudding. And my dad, who's not with us
Oh,
any longer, hopefully he'll be listening. He loved rice pudding.
well,
So
okay.
I want you to share that story. And if you
At,
can, that recipe for rice pudding.
well, at the start of the pandemic, one of my cousins reminded me that I had a recipe that I had written probably a dozen years ago.
Uh-huh.
My mom had recently retired. Joan Hamburg, a New York radio food personality, had a show on,
Yes.
and she announced that she was having a rice contest.
Uh-huh.
Now, by this time, my great uncle was in his 90s. He owned a candy store on Queens Boulevard in Rego Park, Queens,
Mhm.
and he swore and we all agreed he made the most amazing rice pudding.
Wow.
I conspired with a cousin of mine,
Uh-huh.
and I wrote up the recipe. I submitted it.
Uh-huh.
Weeks later, my great aunt and uncle are sitting in their Queen's kitchen,
Uh-huh.
and they hear the winners of the rice pudding contest. First runner-up, Bernie Greenberg. They look at each other in shock. He he won this contest that he had no idea he was entered in.
Oh my gosh.
He proceeds to make he proceeds to make two trays of rice pudding. One he brings into me. The other, now at this point he's in his late 80s. He brings both trays into the city. One tray he brings up to the radio station to drop off at Joan Hamburg's, where we picked up his grand prize, which I believe was a Carolina rice baseball hat and a 5-pound bag of Carolina rice. And he became famous in that way. And I made the recipe last week.
Right.
If somebody looks up the website and they contact me, I'll be glad to share the recipe.
Is there an ingredient that you think really made the recipe like more of something, or is there
actually? Yeah, there's two things. It was a New York candy store. He used for his flavoring. For his flavoring, it was Fox's vanilla syrup. If you've ever heard, New York City egg creams are famous for Fox's chocolate syrup, which is a fountain syrup. You can still buy it at many supermarkets.
Wow.
And Fox's makes a vanilla syrup that is also available. So I hunted it down to make it. And the other part of it is that I realized he made it just like risotto. He stood over that pot for 45 minutes.
Wow. So time. And in Italian cooking, we say that is this one of our secret ingredients in Italian cooking is time. And that's definitely, yes, if he stood over it, made it like risotto, then that is definitely wow. But that vanilla syrup sounds amazing. I've never tried it, but I will definitely.
It's on the shelf where all the where Fox's is and Bosco and whatever other chocolate syrups they're selling these days.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it is online because I've had friends from across the country search it out online. And as I said, but the key really was, and I had no clue, in the sense that he was making it just like risotto.
Wow.
And he tempered it with eggs at the end. And same thing, I didn't really know about tempering back, then. Of course, once I went to culinary school, I learned how to temper things and everything else. So it's amazing. So those were his easy tricks to making the
rice pudding. Oh, that sounds amazing. So Jeff, I always ask everyone at the end of my podcast interviews. Well, let me ask you first before we get ready to end. So where can people find you? I know you said people can email you if they want the recipe, or go to your website.
They can go to my website, kitchenclassroom.net, and they can just click through the link there to email me.
To contact you and email you.
Yeah, please.
That's great. So let's see. So yes, what I usually ask all my guests at the end of their interview is, what does food mean to you? Do you have anything you can tell us of what does food mean to you?
Well, as I said, to me, I really feel a meal is one of the greatest gifts you can offer, whether it's to yourself, someone special, or a group of guests. I love working with food. It's a joy. And I love giving the gift, and when I say gift, it could be a simple meal tonight. It's that simple and nice as it is.
That is a wonderful gift. I think people take it for granted. They don't realize all the thought and time that goes into making even just a simple meal, a great meal. So I think that's a great gift. And that's one of my favorite gifts too. So that's great. Well, Jeff Seligman, executive chef and director of kitchenclassroom.net, and you can find him at kitchenclassroom.net, and don't forget to contact him for that great rice pudding recipe. Jeff, thanks so much for being a guest on the Maria Liberati Show. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Maria Liberati Show, and thanks to my guest, executive chef Jeff Seligman, and my producer, Britton Roselle. And you can follow me on Twitter at Maria Liberati, that's with a capital M, on Facebook at Chef Maria Liberati, on Instagram at Maria Liberati, and LinkedIn at M Liberati. And as always, my blog and website, marialiberati.com, and my Roku channel, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, by Maria Liberati. And don't forget, share your answers of what does food mean to you in a social media post of 50 words or less, hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show, or an audio soundbite of 60 seconds or less. Share it and hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show. And if your soundbite or post are shared on one of my upcoming podcast segments, you'll receive a copy of one of my books from the Basic Art of Italian Cooking book series as a thank you. And don't forget to share pictures of your creating my amaretto ricotta cheesecake that I shared in this segment today. Please share your pictures. Let me know how you like the recipe, if you changed it a little bit. If you use the same recipe, share your pictures. We'll be sharing that on my website also. Until next time, peace, love, and pasta.